The NSLS-II Show with your hosts, Matthew Whitaker and Rob Palomino, and special guests, Mercy Baez, Dava Keavney, and John Hill.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello.
to the newest edition of the NSLS-II UEC show. I'm your host, Matt Whitaker, as always. And as we have grown to tradition here on the UEC show, we do rotate the co-hosts, and we have a new member of the UEC joining us as the co-host for the first time this time, and that is Rob Palomino. He is the outreach officer for the UEC and a senior chemist at BASF. So Rob, welcome to the UEC show.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone.
So, this should be a good time today. I think it's, no pressure. We have a couple of high profile guests this time. So things should be pretty good. Now, before we get to the guests, I want to introduce you a little bit and talk a bit about you as a person away from work, just so that everybody knows that we're all human here. And I understand that one of the things that you are really, really interested in is motorcycle riding and MotoGP. So you apparently follow the sport quite religiously. Is that right?
Yes, it's actually the only sport that I follow, believe it or not. Just usually surprises people. Growing up, that was actually what I wanted to be, a MotoGP rider or a pilot in the Air Force. Neither of those worked out, thanks to, or maybe it's a good idea, to my mother, who kind of demanded that be different, right? So I kind of went on to pre-medicine and then ultimately research in chemistry as a consolation prize. So
yeah. So one of these days I'm going to find somebody else who likes professional wrestling, and then we're going to have a real conversation. But so now this is your first year on the UEC. You were just elected this last user meeting, and you have signed on to be the outreach officer. So do you have any ideas about what it is that you want to do in your role as the outreach officer for the UEC this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why I joined the UEC is it also kind of falls in line with the outreach officer, trying to make sure a lot of people know about the NSLS-II and the UEC, and trying to promote all uses of it, whether it be proprietary or not, right?
Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely one of the big things that we want to do on the show here is make sure that the word about the NSLS-II and what's going on there gets out to the general public and to industrial users as well. Of course, that's very important. So we're definitely glad to have you on the UEC, and we're glad to have you here as the co-host today. So at this time, I'd like to bring out our first guest, if that's all right with you. And our first guest today is going to be Mercy Baez. She is the new, or will be shortly, the new NSLS-II User Program Coordinator. Mercy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, it's definitely great to have you here today. So again, to humanize you a little bit, I've known you for a long time, but maybe some of the users who are watching don't have that same privilege. So I understand that you recently took up kayaking as a hobby. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. So I've always enjoyed having a very active lifestyle, and kayaking is one of the activities that I enjoy most while vacationing. So what I decided to do this year was to purchase my own kayak. So I've been spending my summer in the water, doing a little kayaking, testing it out. That's actually, as a matter of fact, that's actually encouraged me to join the BNL Dragon team this year. So we're going to be competing in a festival in the next couple of weeks. So you have to come out and see me.
Absolutely. That's very cool. So I owe you one. Have you seen any good live music lately, perchance, that you might have been to?
As a matter of fact, I have about 2 weeks ago, I did see this pretty awesome scientist called Mad. He was performing out in Lake Grove, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that was really cool. But I definitely owe you one now, so I will certainly come out to see that. So I would like to take this opportunity, now that we have you on the show, to introduce you to the users at large, and just can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your experience at BNL?
Yeah, most definitely. So my career here at BNL started back in May of 2003. At that time, I actually started in the Rick and AGS User Center. And some of my duties at that time included processing GIST registrations, checking in users, administrating training, issuing access cards. I was there for about 2 years. And in 2005, I decided to take a position over at the old LightSource facility. My duties were a bit similar, but at a much larger scale since the user population at LightSource was much larger. Since then, I've transitioned over to LightSource-II, and although my duties have evolved a bit, I am now the conference coordinator, or should I say I was the conference coordinator for LightSource and LBMS. I was responsible for organizing all conferences, workshops, and courses for both facilities. And now I've taken over the role of user program coordinator for both facilities.
Very cool.
That's pretty cool. But you know, not all of us know exactly what LBMS is. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yes, so LBMS actually refers to the Laboratory for Biomolecular Structure, which is a new facility for life science imaging here at BNL.
Nice. Yeah, it's very good to see you in this new role, because I mean, I've known you for many years, and there's always been the case that we've run into before where when we have a question that no one else could answer, we would go to Mercy and Mercy would have the answer. So now you're the person with the backup answer, and you're also the frontline defense. So this is definitely going to be good. Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, besides working more closely with me personally, what are you looking forward to most in your new role?
So as conference coordinator, I feel like I work really closely with the BNL scientists and the organizers. As the program coordinator now for both facilities, I'm actually looking forward to working closely with the actual users themselves. I don't know, just knowing or seeing a new user walk into the facility and knowing that I was actually a part of paving a new future and new discoveries for our facility is a bit rewarding in itself.
So speaking of new users, what are some of the common mistakes that you feel that users tend to make, and how could they avoid those ahead of time to prevent issues later on?
Some of the common mistakes that I see a lot often are actually the most simpler mistakes. For instance, the very beginning, the first process when a user goes to submit a guest registration form, some users tend to omit information from the forms. I would like to encourage all users to address all questions on the forms, because going back and forth trying to obtain the information after the fact does delay the approval process quite a bit. So I do encourage our users to make sure that they address all questions on the registration form. Another mistake that I do see often is when users arrive, some of them have not completed their training, and that does cause quite a bit of a delay on expediting their check-in process. So just make sure that you do complete all the required training, check your training, check and make sure that the SAS is approved prior to arriving, and that will help expedite the check-in process, as well as also having or making sure that you do have all the required government issue identification on hand.
All right. So we have had a couple of questions come in. I should say that I was remiss and didn't say this at the beginning before I introduced Mercy. But if anybody has any questions that are in the audience today, please use the Q&A feature here in the Zoom meeting itself, or you can send an email to NSLS-II UEC at bnl.gov, and we can take questions that way as well. But some of the questions that have come in. So first up, what is the deadline for the general user proposal submissions for the upcoming cycle?
Oh, that's an easy one. So the deadline for the proposal upcoming cycle is September 30th. So just make sure you have all your proposals in time before midnight on September 30th.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Mercy. We have another one here. Is there any news regarding the new proposal system?
Yep. So we are currently working on a new universal proposal system. The system is in collaboration with APS, LCLS, and NSLS. The system is going to allow us, or is going to allow users to view all proposals for each facility or for all facility. And it is actually expected to be completed by early next year, hopefully.
Oh, great. All right. So what is the best way to reach someone in the user office in case a user should need assistance with anything?
Okay, so if anyone should need assistance, the easiest way to reach us is by email at NSLS-II user@bnl.gov. That inbox is actually manned 24 hours a day. We try to 7 days a week. During off hours, you could expect a slight delay, but for the most part, someone's always tending to that inbox. So please feel free to reach out to us anytime.
Thanks. And is there anything that you'd like to inform or tell our users?
I would like to encourage our users to please be sure to submit their end of run form at the end of each beam time. This will actually help us in addressing any issues or concerns that the users may have, and it will actually help us in bettering our service to our users.
Yeah, very true. I can at least speak from personal experience in being mildly delinquent in that. So I will take that to heart since you asked so nicely and make sure that those are done.
We actually carefully review those forms, so please be sure to submit them.
All right, great. Well, Mercy, I really do want to thank you for taking time today to be with us and to introduce yourself to the user community for NSLS-II. I'm sure that we will all be seeing you very, very soon in our futures as we work at the facility, and really welcome aboard. We're really glad to have you, not only as users, but as part of the UEC. I think this is a great fit and an excellent choice made by whoever it was that made that choice.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, so at this time, I'd like to bring out our second guest, who is a challenger for the ratings draw in this episode of the UEC show. At this point, I would like to introduce Dava Keavney, who is the new Department of Energy Program Manager for Scientific User Facilities. Dava, welcome to the UEC show.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for having me on. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So you're definitely a VIP for sure. And there was a lot of discussion ahead of time about what I should talk about and what I shouldn't talk about. So I have kind of a script about what we should go through for this. If you don't mind, I'm going to throw that script away, and we're just going to kind of riff and go back and forth.
We're going to go rogue.
Yeah, as long as that works for you.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, cool. I like this already. So just to give you a little bit of background on who you are as a person. I understand that you once swam from Alcatraz to San Francisco. Now, was this a personal choice or was it necessity?
I'm not sure how to answer that actually, because I'm not sure which one reflects more poorly on me. So, but no, it was a personal choice. It was part of the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon, which so it gets even worse because I actually did a triathlon as part of this. So. Which I did actually, and I just remembered this. It was the same trip that I went out to the Bay Area for my first synchrotron experiment, which was at SSRL.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was quite a I used to be way into doing. I did marathons and triathlons for a long time. I haven't in a while, but.
Me neither. So now also you and I have something in common in that we both have 11-year-olds.
Right.
Now
I
you
have an 11-year-old.
Yeah, you have taught yours Python, and now they're interested in learning assembly. Is that right?
That's what he said. He's I and the things he wants to do he wants to write a new programming language in assembly or something. And I'm like, take human bytes out of this, please,
Well, that's kind of the opposite problem I have. The only thing my daughter really wants to learn is how to earn more bells in Animal Crossing. So I think we have different scales to the problem. So
I don't know anything about, I don't really know anything about Animal Crossing. So,
it's
I'm going to recommend not using assembly, I guess, for it. So, but if you do need anything built in Minecraft, I can definitely hook you up. So,
oh sweet. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
kind of behind on that actually, so that might help. All right, cool. So basically we wanted to give you the platform today to kind of introduce
Yeah.
yourself to the NSLS-II staff and to the users who are watching from the audience, and just let you talk a little bit about, you know, who you are, what your priorities are, and where you see things going in the future.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about my background first, I guess. And so yeah, so my background is in condensed matter physics and in materials physics. I started out in like my graduate school and postdoc as more on the synthesis side. You know, I was growing thin films of magnetic materials and for you know, spintronic applications and things like that. Then in, let's see, after my postdoc, then I joined the APS as a mainline scientist, doing magnetic spectroscopies, you know, which were, you know, applicable to the materials I had been making before, of course. And I was there for about 18 years. And I became interested in science policy around sort of the end of that time, and I was wanting to do something a little different. So I pursued the AAAS Policy Fellowship in Washington, D.C. And that's what brought me over here in 2019. And I worked, my placement for that was at the State Department. And then after that, that's a 2-year fellowship. And then after that, I worked for a year in DOE in the EERE office. And in both of those positions, I was kind of working on climate and energy. And then this year, in June, I joined BES, Office of Science and BES, as your program manager. And so here I am. And so basically, I'm interested in you know, maintaining connections with the user communities and the staff and everything. So I'm really grateful for this show. I've been telling the other light source UECs that they should have a show as well. So, and I'll go on their shows as, you know, as they do. But
thanks for the free promotion there. Definitely appreciated, right? That's a pretty interesting journey that you've had. So what was the catalyst that kind of sparked you to make that jump?
Yeah, I mean, so when like I was saying, I was, after a long time at the APS, I was kind of, you know, wanting to see kind of a broader impact and it kind of interact with science differently, and, you know, help promote science in a different way to, you know, in the government and to the public. And so when the BES program manager position came up, I saw it as an opportunity to, you know, help the light source community by representing them to, you know, the rest of the government, and and promote the science that comes out of the light sources. So to basically use my background with the light sources and what I've learned in the federal government to help in that way.
Very cool. So now, as the new program manager for scientific user facilities, do you have a particular area that you want to focus on first as your main thrust?
Yeah, I'll kind of mention two. So I mean, there were two things that I always felt when I was a beamline scientist at the APS. One is that nobody knows what a synchrotron or a light source does, or you know, how it works, or what it is and what it does. And the other one is that the staff at these, and the users perhaps too, don't know a lot about what goes on with DOE. So my goals would be to help in both ways. And for the first one, I'm interested in communication of all types. Promoting the light source science. I mean, I see a big part of my role as representing the light sources to the rest of DOE and the rest of the executive branch, Congress, and the public as much as I can. And so I'm interested in any kind of new communication products, or in developing things like that we can use to sort of get the word out and raise the profile of the science that goes on here. I mean, I think the problem is I view it as a sort of a recognition deficit that the light sources have. NASA can land like a robot on Mars and have it like do it all itself, like take make all the decisions of where to land and everything, and take videos of itself doing it, and everyone says great, and they don't have to explain about what what it is. They don't have to. Everybody already knows. So we don't have that. So that's the kind of thing I want to address. And one way that we're looking at is a series of webinars, for example, that would be public facing. We're kind of developing this idea right now, and also aimed at other people within the government and Congress and audiences like that. And as for the second one, that's another reason I'm here. Is I would like to be connected with the users and the staff as much as possible. And absent the ability to go there and walk around the ring, this is a great way to do it. So this is the reason why I'm happy for this show. However, I should actually mention we're actually able to travel now, and so I should have mentioned that I will be visiting the NSLS-II and the CFN next week, Thursday and Friday next week. So
that's cool, because it's right before I leave for APS, so hopefully I'll be able to catch you while you're there. Okay. That's going to be awesome.
Great. Yeah.
It was a really good comparison that you mentioned, with NASA, right? Like everybody knows about everything that they're doing. There's always people watching things, right? But like you said, for synchrotrons, most people don't even know what it is. I can't count how many times I have to explain it, almost to the point that I don't even bother bringing it up because it's just a long conversation to have, right?
Right.
You mentioned some of the ways on kind of addressing that deficit. Do you have any other ideas, or is there a best way to go about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's a really long game. I think that's part of the it's part of a long-term strategy. I think that we need to have as to raise our profile, and there are a lot of ways to do it. I mean, like these webinars I have that I mentioned are one way that we're starting. We're developing other ideas. However, I am interested in any ideas that your users have or that you all have, because honestly, I'm not an expert at public relations either. So I'm really open to any ideas, like what if it's a science open mic or something, like any kind of thing, or written products and things like that. But I just think that the light sources, and I see myself as kind of hopefully sort of shepherding an effort to do this, need to raise their profile in a coordinated way, and this will help with all kinds of issues that we have with public recognition, and just I don't know. there's just huge benefits when you don't have to explain, okay, here's like, this is how it works first, and now we can tell you what it does. You know, I mean, communications it's really, I don't know if it's changed or not in the last 10 years or something, but it seems like communications has to be like, you have to tell them like what it is like right away, like otherwise people don't pay attention. So I think that's the problem that we're up against. So
Yeah.
but,
living in the age of the soundbite, it's very,
Yeah.
very difficult. Breaking something like a synchrotron down into a soundbite is even more difficult.
right.
So yeah, no,
TikTok
if
video.
yeah, right.
But I think so. I mean, there's a lot of the synchrotrons and the light sources and the user facilities in general. There's a huge amount of work going on that is aligned with, you know, the national priorities like clean energy and microelectronics and drug discovery and things like that. And that we just need to get that out there. We need to, with, you know, with good writing and with good, you know, good, you know, I don't want to say production value, but like just some things that are really accessible to the overall population, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's all right with you, we do have a couple of quick questions from
Sure.
the audience that we wanted to get into real quick. I'm sure you were expecting this one. This was no doubt one that's on everybody's mind. Can you make any comment about the budget process for the next year? You know, where we stand and what it looks like so far.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, it's a little frustrating because unfortunately, you know as much as I do about the budget at this point, because we're at a like, so normally the budget, you know, the president proposes the budget and then the House and Senate mark it up and have their own bills, and we're at the point where we're kind of waiting for that markup process to happen, and then it gets passed, or, you know, and we don't know when that would get passed. So what has happened so far is that the House passed the appropriations bill that covers DOE and a lot of other agencies. The Senate has not marked it up yet. Yeah, but there was one markup release that was from one side of the aisle, basically. So, but it didn't have any input from the other side. So that's not gonna, they're gonna have to work on it together. So so we're kind of waiting for that. And you know, the Senate is in session this month. Whether or not that can happen this month, I would not want to predict, you know. But you know, we only have the rest of this month before the fiscal year is up. So
All right.
so
Thank you.
I'm sorry I don't have a lot of information. I know it's frustrating not knowing what's going on, but
Yeah, but I think sometimes there's some sharing of camaraderie when you're as frustrated as the rest of us, right? So it's not always a bad thing. We have another question here, and it is, you kind of already answered this so far, but what are your priorities for the future?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, yeah, long term, you know, this long game of increasing their profile, I think, and getting people to better understand what how much we contribute to society, I think is a big priority. Shorter term, you know, we have a lot of challenges, of course, with, you know, the recovering from operations during COVID, you know, what that looks like. Transitioning, you know, new capabilities to operations and things like that. And I think that there's, you know, all of these kind of raise the sort of necessity and the opportunity to kind of do some thinking about, you know, where we want to put our resources, I guess, and you know, like what are the best ways to get the most out of these facilities that we've built, you know, like what infrastructure, like data analysis and data processing and that sort of thing, to actually utilize these new capabilities. That's a big priority. And let's see, yeah, I think there's a lot of thinking that can be done about, even just the modalities of how we work, and using multimodal experiments and simultaneous experiments and that sort of thing, and even think about what it means to do a synchrotron experiment, perhaps. But this is getting longer term, I think. So, but I think there's a lot of opportunities there by concentrating on the experimental systems. I think there's quite a bit of need and also opportunity to get a lot out of there. So
very cool. So you spoke earlier a lot about communicating science to the public and getting the message across. So what would you tell a scientist who wants to communicate with the public? What advice would you give them?
Okay. Well, I'm not a public relations expert, but my feeling is that most of the time people don't know why you're talking to them. Like, they're like, they don't know why what you're saying is important, and so they need to be told this like right up front. And I think this gets back to what we were talking about before a little bit, with the sort of the attention span or the soundbite. I mean, I don't want to lament it. I don't want to celebrate it, but it is true. I think that it's very important to say, okay, this is what I'm going to tell you, and this is why it's important, like right up front, and then keep reminding people of that as you speak. I think that I don't want to get tomatoes thrown at me, but too many scientists don't do that. I think there's an assumption that the importance of why this is important and the reason why somebody should listen to you is understood, and you don't have to explain that. So, but you do. So, I guess that's my answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important, right? In order for them to trust us more, we got to be better at communicating with them, right? We have one final question here that we can ask. You mentioned before in the beginning when you're kind of talking about your path, right? That you took that AAS fellowship. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. The AAS is Science and Technology Policy Fellowships. Is a program that brings scientists, you need scientists and engineers. You need to be a PhD scientist or a master's in engineering to participate, and you also have to be a U.S. citizen. But so it brings people into Washington for a 2-year fellowship, or 1 or 2 years, actually, depending on your placement. So I don't want to get into too many details, but 1 to 2 years within the executive branch or Congress to work in an office. It could be an office like Office of Science, it could be, in the office I was in EERE, we had, about 10 fellows actually. And to work as, policy advisors and to learn policy and provide scientific, analysis and advice and expertise to the government. And then most of a large percent of them stay in the government, like I did. Some go back to the institution they were at before, and some just do something completely different, like start their own business or something like that. But it certainly was a career changer for me. And so, anyone who's interested in policy, it's certainly something to look into. And the fellowships normally go September to September, and so the deadline for next year is November 1st. So there's still time to write an application.
All right. Perfect. It's like you've done this before, to end with the advertisement right there. Like it's
Right.
it's always very good. So Dava, I don't want to take too much of your time today, but I do want to thank you very much for coming on the show and introducing yourself to the world here. I think it's definitely good to know that we have you in our corner, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the future. And I will say that there is a standing invitation. Anytime you want to come back, you let us know. And if we don't have a show scheduled, we might just make one for you. So it was definitely great having you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was fun. Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks again for coming. All right. So at this time, I think it's just about time to bring out our final guest, our returning champ, the world heavyweight champion. I think it's eight-time world heavyweight champion now. Billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, low-key vigilante, many other things that we could add here. We won't talk too much about that last one, but he is the director of the NSLS-II, John Hill. John, welcome back.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be back. I think they may have lost my crown this meeting, though, in terms of rating draw. I think Dava will be the rating draw for today. But so sad to lose my crown, but in a great cause. Great to have her here. Very appreciative of her joining us all and talking to us all. That was really fun to have her on the show.
Absolutely. I mean, we may be able to make you guys challenge for a tag team championship here. So that should be something else to add to your trophy case at the end. So as always, we want to have you out here so that you can kind of give us the lowdown on what's going on around NSLS-II and give us some of the updates and some of the milestones that have been going down since the user meeting. So John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate it. And good to see everyone this afternoon too, and a chance to talk to all the user groups. I wanted to start with safety, obviously the core value here. We've recently had another electrical shock incident on one of our beam lines. Fortunately, no one was hurt. No one seriously hurt, so that's the good news. But there were some common features with the previous one that you may remember back in the fall on turbo cart. This was a deposition chamber this time around, but in both cases, these were user equipment that people had brought to the facility. They'd modified them from the commercial setup, and there's a faulty ground connection. So three commonalities to these two instances. So that set off alarm bells for us, of course. And we want to try to do everything we can to reduce the chance of something like this happening again. So we've instituted electrical safety walkdowns down each of the beam lines and also the accelerator components. We bought 30 ground fault circuit interrupters, GFCIs, that you can plug in series with your equipment. So if something does go wrong, they trip, and that prevents serious shocks occurring. So if users would like to borrow those or use them for their equipment, you can see Bob Lee and he can sort you out there. We're also looking at installing some of them in the outlets themselves so that they're sort of automatic for places where user equipment frequently gets plugged in. My message to the users, though, is that you can help us in this. And in particular, if you're bringing electrical equipment to NSLS-II, it has to be inspected before you use it, without exception. So please put it on the SAF, let us know you're bringing it, plenty of time, and then bring it with plenty of time to do that inspection. And it needs to be inspected every time you bring it, not just the first time. So again, factor that into your planning when you're bringing equipment to us. And this is equipment that you've built yourself or commercial equipment. Either way, we need to take a look at it, make sure it's safe before we plug it in and before you use it. So that's my message to all the users today in regard to the electrical safety. We are in the midst of a shutdown. In fact, we're about to conclude it. So I want to go through some of the things that have been happening during that shutdown. It was a really busy one the last few weeks. The injector startup is tonight. Hopefully that goes well in the storage ring tomorrow morning. One of the big events that during this shutdown was the installation of the HEX superconducting wiggler. This is the device that will power the HEX beamline, the high energy scattering beamline that we're almost ready to complete construction of. So that wiggler is in the ring, installed, vacuum is good, it's at low temperatures, it's cold, it's superconducting. The plan is to run this beam through that device with the device turned off, so we won't be producing X-rays, but just run the electron beam through it, make sure that all works, and we can store beam, that kind of thing, starting Friday, ramping up to 400 milliamps in studies mode over the weekend. If that all goes well, then we can come up into operations on Monday morning as planned. The beamline itself, though, needs to go through what's called an IRR, Instrument Readiness Review, where we check the whole system out and make sure it's safe to operate. That review is scheduled for early October, and that will then allow us to bring photons out on the floor and start commissioning that beamline. So late fall, something like that, we should be doing the first experiments on that beamline to start commissioning it. And of course, then we're also doing the outreach to bring in the user community for that particular beamline. It's funded by New York State with particular emphasis on clean energy, energy storage, and New York State industries. So as a partner beamline, that's the focus of the partner time there. So that's an outreach program that we are running right now to bring in those kind of users. That may be everything from large companies to small startups should be coming in and imaging their batteries and other devices on that beamline. So that's good news there. Not directly connected to the shutdown, but for those of you who are regular viewers will remember stories on the klystrons. These are the devices that power the RF cavities that then power the ring. It's been a long saga, and we're doing two things to mitigate that that I'll chat with you about now. One is moving away from that technology to using solid state amplifiers. They have real advantages in terms of modularity, easy to switch them in and out if something does fail. And there are more manufacturers around now for that technology. So there's an RFP out on the street right now for what will be our second solid state amplifier. It's about $1.7 million. So looking forward to getting that underway. Because unfortunately, the lead time is about 2 years. So this is not an immediate fix for anything, but is in the pipeline. We've also been successful in winning a proposal out of a piece of DOE called RDAP, which is an accelerated research program within DOE to develop manufacturing capability for klystrons in the US, domestic capability. So the current klystron manufacturers are all foreign, and we're having real issues with those vendors for various reasons right now. So this is to work with a California company to produce the first made in the USA 300 kilowatt klystron. So that's also underway now. Another 2-year lead time on that, but again, that will give us down the line some redundancy and some protection in terms of these valuable components. So that's the shutdown activities. Then on Monday, we come back out of shutdown into operations, so September 12th. Looking forward to that. It's going to be another busy cycle. There are presently no restrictions on users in terms of COVID, so we're looking forward to having people back on site. Again, currently Suffolk County is at a medium COVID level, which means we don't need to wear masks at Brookhaven, so that's also pleasant, frankly, to be not having that restriction. And as much as remote users are wonderful, and it's a fact of life and a way of life now going forward, being on site does bring a lot of extra value. So we're looking forward to having those back here, working with them in person. Hope to see you all back here and carrying out research in collaboration with us. That's the reason we're here, and that's the part we enjoy. So looking forward to that. A couple of words on beamline construction, the programs that are going right now. I already mentioned HEX, which is the high-energy scattering beamline. We expect to start commissioning this fall. The CDI beamline, that's coherent diffraction imaging, that's part of the NSLS-II construction project, had its groundbreaking ceremony a few weeks ago. If you go around there now, the work is underway to build the satellite end station building. That's the very visible sign of that beamline coming along, so that's pretty exciting. In terms of the NSLS-II project itself, we had some really good news there. The Inflation Reduction Act has forward funded some of that project to the tune of $18.5 million in FY22. That's this fiscal year, so the money's due any day now. It's not additional money. It's not like we're be able to go out and buy extra scope with that, but it really is really important in terms of keeping the project on schedule. So it means, for example, if there's a continuing resolution this year, we can weather that without any problem because the money will already be physically here at Brookhaven. And so that removes that worry from the project. But perhaps more importantly, we can also bring some procurements forward that we couldn't have otherwise afforded and do them earlier. And so we can try and bring in some of the schedule on the RE and SXN beamlines we're working out exactly by how much, but several months, hopefully, to deliver those beamlines a bit earlier. So this is really good news for that project. And just want to say thank you to the DOE for that support and that faith that they have in us in delivering that project, to deliver that money earlier. It's going to make a big difference. So thank you, Dava, and the rest of DOE for that. The INF project, this is the nano IR beamline that will do optical spectroscopy on the nanoscale, really exciting beamline. That's also made recent progress. The New York State has agreed to fund that. This is through what's called the Empire State Development Corporation. They had a board meeting a couple of weeks ago where they approved the $15 million for that instrument. That's for one instrument, NSLS-II, the INF beamline, and then a scanning probe instrument at CFN. They're both going to be part of the Center for Co-Design for Quantum Advantage. This is the C-squared QA Quantum Computing Center that Brookhaven leads, and they'll be doing work developing new, understanding and developing new superconducting technology for the qubits in those devices. So really exciting project. Looking forward to getting that underway now that we've got that approved. And the last thing I thought I'd tell you all about is a very cool science result that just came out. This is work done by users from Cornell, Princeton, and a company in the UK. That came out in Nature, I think this week or last week, using one of our crystallography beamlines, AMX. This group was interested in doing some organic synthesis to try and develop a catalyst for forming very particular carbon-carbon bonds. These are what's called sp3 bonds. They're very directional bonds, and they were looking for a catalyst that would allow them to form those bonds in a flat plane. And that's really important for some pharmaceuticals and for some chemicals for the agriculture industry. So having a catalyst that could direct that bonding formation was really important. It's been very difficult to find. This group found an enzyme in a bacteria, actually, that they thought would catalyze just this reaction. They found that, in fact, it does very efficiently. They have to shine light at the catalyst first to make it active, and then it forms these bonds. So it's a photocatalyst. And they use AMX to solve the structure of this enzyme and show exactly what parts of the enzyme are doing the work. So really, really cool result, very important result in terms of the synthesis of these carbon molecules. So something that I think will have impact down the line, particularly in the drug discovery area, and as I said, chemicals for agriculture. So great to see NSLS-II being used in such a way, and another shining example from our protein crystallography beamlines, the work they can do. And those are my updates.
So John, you mentioned a bit about the next 2 project, right? But are there any updates on the next 3 project?
Yeah, nothing formal yet, but certainly some interesting signs. So the next 3 project, for those of you who don't know, is a project to build out more beamlines at NSLS-II, hopefully a large number. That number has yet to be defined. If you look at the budgets that Dava was just mentioning, the House and Senate, they both have a small amount of money to start next 3 in it. So about $1.5 million for next year, FY23. That would allow us to sort of stand up the organization, begin to think about those beamlines in a bit more detail about which beamlines they are. Many of you remember the strategic planning workshop we held a few years ago that where we worked with the user community to define what the next set of beamlines should look like, and what sort of science challenges they should address, what beamlines would work for that. That workshop produced, I think, a list of 19 beamlines. We've since been working internally to think about what those beamlines should look like in a bit more detail, how much they're going to cost, how long they would take to build, what science missions they would really meet, those kind of questions. And as this project gets a bit more momentum behind it, hopefully will become a real project at some point next year. I should emphasize it's not yet a project, this is still hopes and dreams. Then we can go back to the user community and propose exactly which beamlines we'll build first and in what order. And again, they'll be oriented towards the science challenges that we're facing, like Dava had already mentioned, the clean energy and climate, microelectronics, quantum. These are the areas that the administration is focusing on that NSLS-II can make a real contribution to. So that's what next 3 is all about. And like I said, hopefully we'll get some good news on that next year.
That's very cool. It'd be great to see some more beamlines come into NSLS-II. The whole thing, it's awesome being able to watch it grow up from its infancy, and see it fully formed as it goes down the line.
Yeah, we've got a fabulous suite of beamlines, but imagining that being complement and a full facility, I think we'd really do some amazing things. And we will choose beamlines that will work with existing beamlines in a complementary fashion. So the multimodal idea that we continually talking about here that allows you to bring multiple techniques together, this will be enhanced by having these additional beamlines on the floor.
Now, a little bit earlier in what you were talking about, you mentioned the possibility of a continuing resolution. You mentioned that you can weather that storm, but how do you feel? How does that look to impact NSLS-II?
Yeah, so the continuing resolution is what will happen if there isn't a budget passed by October 1st. And if you look back over the last 20 years, that's usually the case, frankly. The budget comes somewhat later in the year, in the fiscal year. So the way we weather that, so what happens in that case is a continuing resolution is passed, which basically fixes the funding levels at the previous year's funding levels. So we'll get each month a 12th of what we had for last year in any given year. So we can make our budget planning on that assumption. We have what we call a carry forward, which is essentially money in the bank that we haven't spent this year that we can then put to use next year. So the combination of those two things, the the flat funding from a continuing resolution plus the carry forward, I think puts us in a reasonably good shape. So I think that we will be able to weather continuing resolution for some period of time into the next fiscal year. So just to reassure users and staff, that's not an issue that I'm worried about a lot this year.
So we've heard that you were involved in DOE's roundtable on biopreparedness. Can you say anything more about that?
Yeah, actually, I'd be happy to. So this was an activity organized out of the DOE Office of Science. So 3 offices collaborate on this: Basic Energy Sciences, Biological and Environmental Research, and OSCA, the Advanced Scientific Computing piece of DOE. So those 3 offices felt that they ought to think about how the nation could be better prepared in the event of another bio event. So obviously COVID was a really motivating factor here, but so one fear is there's going to be another virus or maybe a variant of COVID, SARS-CoV-2 that will come along, but there might be other things that impact us, and recognizing that basic research can put you in a much better place to solve those challenges when they come along. And the speed with which vaccines came out this time around, of course, was driven by basic research that had been done in the years prior on viruses in general, but SARS-CoV-1 in particular. So the idea behind the roundtable was to start thinking about what should we do better in terms of basic research to prepare us for other such bio events. So we held this roundtable back in March, I think it was, where we brought speakers from other federal agencies. So we had NIH, CDC, Health and Department of Homeland Security. Those kind of agencies came and talked about what they saw the challenges were, where they had basic research needs that might address those challenges. And then we had people from across the DOE talking about the capabilities and the ideas we've got within the complex to address those challenges. So that's boiled up into a report. The report is not yet issued. It's about coming out, I hope, in the next few weeks. There is a summary of the report out, a brochure online that you can look at if you're interested, where we identified 5 what we call priority research directions, priority research opportunities of places where we thought that we can contribute. So there was a lot of work, very stimulating discussions there, and a lot of people contributed to this report. The chairs on the panel with me were Pat Fitch and Deb Gracio, and then Michelle Buchanan from DOE worked on this. Frankly, an activity I'm kind of proud of. I think there's a real place for this, for the DOE in general to contribute to this threat. And the possible outcome of this is that there may be funding associated with this next year under the so-called BRAVE initiative. So there's also positioning the DOE to understand how it might spend that. So that's what's been going on in that area.
Well, that's very cool. So there's been a lot of activity going on in your life and at NSLS-II recently, which is always good to see. And I know we're just about running out of time here, so I wanted to thank you very much once again for coming on the UEC show.
Always a pleasure.
And it's definitely good to hear from you, and great to hear about all the good things that are going on at NSLS-II. So at this time, we will let you go, get back to your busy schedule, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, take care, everyone. Bye.
So at this point in time, we have exhausted our guest list at this point, and we are about to close out the UEC show. So I would like to say that just a quick reminder that the Users Executive Committee for NSLS-II is elected to represent the user community of NSLS-II. So if you ever have any questions or concerns, we're always here for you. We have a meeting every month at the very least, and our email address is always open. Please feel free to send a message to NSLS-II UEC at bnl.gov. So one of the things that you might have noticed in the opening is that it's a different type of opening that we normally have. I just wanted to say thank you and a good journey to our friends Gretchen, who retired last year, and Tim Kuhn, who was our director for the first few years of the show here. And we just want to wish them good luck and good journey in their new, well, in Tim's case, his new position, and in Gretchen's case, not having to worry about a position. And just as this show proves that we are still in very good hands with Jess and Mercy. So thank you guys very much for being part of this and continuing the legacy the show has built. So that about does it for what we've got here today.
Don't forget, everyone, though, we do have the general user proposal deadline the end of this month, September 30th. So just be prepared for that and make sure you get that in before midnight.
Good call. So we will be back with another edition of the UEC show right around the holidays. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. And once again, we want to thank everyone at NSLS-II for keeping the lights on and enabling all of the science that drives all of our lives forward.
Yeah, and thanks to every one of you for tuning in to this as well.
And a very, very extra special thanks to Jess and Cara and Mercy and George for making all of this possible. Especially George here on the day of running all of the IT for us in this remote environment. It's a huge key to making the show a success. So thank you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I have to also echo on that thanks, because if it was left up to me to do this, we'd all be sitting here kind of in silence or stick figures around the place. That video in the beginning would never have been possible. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, stay safe, be well. Next time, we're hoping, fingers crossed, we'll be live again, so the couch will make a comeback. And always remember that metal is forever, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.